I really wanted Christmas in Boston to be good. Not just because Boston is a place that I'm desperate to visit and I kind of wanted to see it on screen, but because it sounded quite interesting. Unfortunately, it wasn't a bad film, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed parts of it, but it just didn't live up to my expectations. I don't know why my expectations were particularly high. It's got 6.1 out of 10 on IMDb, which I thought meant it would be quite good, but I just found it to be quite cringy with what the narrative entailed, and I'll explain that in a moment. But I did find it to be quite clunky almost, and cringy, and instead of waiting in anticipation to find out what happened, I kind of didn't want to watch what happened between some of the characters. It kind of felt really awkward, and I will explain what I mean by that. But generally speaking, it was okay to watch. It was released in 2004, directed by Neill Fearnley, written by Stephanie T. Baxendale, and we have Marla Sokoloff, who plays Gina, and Lindy Booth, who is Ellen. And to make a really long story short, when Gina was at school, she became pen pals with Seth, and they've never met each other. A chance situation means that they are going to be able to meet each other because Seth works for a toy company that's giving a presentation to the company Gina works for, or something like that. It's kind of very briefly explained. But there is a problem. Gina Gina initially, and has over the 13 years, been sending him pictures of her friend because she thinks her friend's more beautiful than she is, so she's been using her friend's pictures. Seth has actually been doing the same thing, sending Gina pictures of his friend instead of himself. Thankfully, they still have the same friends 13 years later, so the friends pose as Gina and Seth and meet each other. And they pretend to both be each other, neither aware that the other person is not the person they think they are. And you're constantly waiting for somebody to find out or somebody to say something that doesn't make much sense. And it just, normally that would interest me. Normally I'd be like, ooh, what's going to happen to make the reveal? Because obviously it's going to happen at some point. But I found with this one, it just felt uncomfortable with two people trying to be the other person, while with the dramatic irony of us knowing that neither was that person. And instead of being curious about when it was happening, I kind of felt nervous and kind of awkward waiting and watching this unfold, because the performances of the actors were good, but the characters pretending to be the other person was really cringeworthy, if that makes sense. So the acting was good, but the characters' behaviours were really quite annoying and just clunky, and I didn't like it at all. It's also not very Christmassy. Yes, it has a touch of Christmas, but when I watch Christmas films, I like them to be very Christmassy, very festive. This would not have put me in the Christmas spirit. You know, I watched this in March. We are in March. If I had watched this in December, it wouldn't have put me in the Christmas spirit. So it wasn't really ticking that many boxes for me. It's not a bad film. The narrative flowed reasonably well. It's relatively well shot. The acting's fine. I just find the characters to be a little bit annoying, and some of the situations to be not that exciting, and indeed, it's not very Christmassy. Would I recommend it? Yes, if you're curious. If you were thinking about seeing it, I'd say give it a go. Maybe you'd like it, but it's never going to be one of my top 10 Christmas film recommendations. Let's just put it that way.